I was born in a town that didn't exist on any map. It wasn't in the bus schedule, it wasn't in the telephone books. I never wanted to be a film or video game or collectible artist, and at the same time, I was able to work in some of the best companies in those industries. Let me explain why this matters and how this connects to my last and my final mentorship that I'm offering. So I was born and raised in Sillamäe, which is in Estonia, which was part of USSR back in the day. It's on the Finnish Gulf Bank, and the reason why I think it's important, why I think it's why it's fascinating, is because of the history, because of the nature of the situation. I wasn't really exposed to the outside world, at least not to the extent that perhaps some of you were. Just like everybody in the post-Soviet bloc, I was getting my exposure to those industries through films, through VHS cassettes, or whatever you want to call, tapes, not cassettes, but tapes. And when I was watching, let's say, Terminator or some other Jurassic Park or some other movies, it never really clicked with me that it is something that people did. It was just something that is entertaining. The thing that clicked with me was when I got, for my birthday, I don't remember how old I was, quite young, probably 10 or something like that, I don't remember, but it was Worms 2, and then there was Diablo 1. And I remember that those discs, they were both pirated, because that's the other thing that in the post-Soviet bloc you would do, I guess. You would just buy those pirated copies of games and films, because that was just the only way you can get them. And so I remember that Worms, they didn't work. The copy was broken, but the thing that was working in them, and just, it's so fascinating. It's almost like there was a reason for it. The thing that worked on the disc were the cinematics, the cutscenes that were inside of the game. And I remember watching them almost on loop. There were 10 of them or something like that, and I just loved them because they were tiny cartoons, but I could sense that they weren't exactly cartoons. There was something about it that was different. It wasn't normal animation, the animation that I was used to. Definitely not Disney, but kind of Soviet animation. And then Diablo 1. Diablo actually worked as the game. The copy was fine, but I remember watching the cinematic, the intro cinematic for the game, and also just getting, I don't know, something definitely was moving inside of me, because again, it wasn't exactly animation, but it wasn't exactly a film, right? It was something in between. It was a cinematic. It was a CGI cinematic. And then eventually I got my hands on a copy of 3ds Max, and this is pretty much how it got started. Now, for the second thing that I mentioned, and it all connects to the context, to the environment I was raised in. I never wanted to be a video game artist or film artist or just artist in general, because there was almost no exposure to that. I did go to a art school, quote-unquote art school, when I was 6 years old, and then another art school when I was 7 until I was, I think, 13 or something like that. 7 years in total, maybe 8 years in total, but it wasn't an art school. I mean, it was something that kids would just do because there's just 3 options. You either go to sports, you go to music school, and then you go to the art school. And if you go to the sports, you can actually get something, you can get some results. If you go to music school, you would also be able to learn to play a piano or guitar or something like that. But if you went to an art school, you would be able to, I don't know, just paint something very, very basic, very, 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 very kind of silly, because the town, it wasn't a city, it was a town, didn't really have any programs, like professional programs for anybody who were interested in art. And so when I was exposed to those big blockbusters, to me it never really clicked, as I said, because there was just absolutely nothing to connect it with. And so for me, the idea that I would be working in Hollywood production, or I would be working in a company that won multiple BAFTA awards because of the not because of the CGI, but because of the storyline and everything else, but it's a video game company, the interesting thing is that even without planning for that, without even wanting that specific thing, I was still able to get to a top level, where I was able to work in the Hollywood production. I was able to work in the company that I mentioned that won BAFTA awards. I was able to work in the collectible industry for one of the top companies in the world, in Japan. The thing that I'm driven by is not a storyline, it's not even the project itself, even though it depends, but in general, if we're talking about, let's say, video games, or if we're talking about, let's say, film, or even collectibles, to me the project almost doesn't matter. And it might sound strange, but I think it's actually a very good thing, because what matters to me is the process itself. It's actually the craft that I love so much, because that's how I started to do things. That's how I started on this path. It wasn't something, like I said, that I thought, okay, I would be working on the next Jurassic Park, or I would be working on the next Terminator. It was just something more basic. I opened 3ds Max. I saw a cube rotating. I was able to rotate the cube by moving my mouse, and it was just something crazy. It was just so spectacular in my mind, and I got hooked immediately. And that's the thing that was constantly present for those 20 years. And so the mentorship that I'm running now, I basically decided to just eliminate everything. I've had up to 5 different mentorships. They were for beginners, there were some individual sessions, there were some art direction mentorships, and I've decided to just make one, focusing on the thing that I'm really good at. Actually 2 of them. The first one is the sculpting itself. I think it's the foundation of everything that we do in production, be it character art, be it creature art. Doesn't really matter. And this is also one of the subjects that I get requested the most, and this is the subject that we spend the time the most during my mentorships. I mean, to give you an example, with one of my students, we spent, I think, in total 12 weeks just on the foundation of the of the body, let's say, of clothing and body, because everything else follows the foundation, right? If you have a good sculpt, quote unquote sculpt, if you have that, everything else is going to be much easier to do. It's going to be much easier to texture that. It's going to be much easier to even just UV and retopologize, as long as you have everything clean and nice and separated and things like that. So I've decided to run my mentorship focusing on that, right? It's going to be characters, it's going to be creatures, and it's going to be clothing, the things that I spend my time most on. And so I've decided to basically focus on those 3 things, right? Something that I'm genuinely good at, something that I've put a lot of time into. At the same time, I don't want to limit it just to the craft itself, because that's just simply not enough. You need to have other skills along with that, and I've decided to include in that mentorship, I call it art direction, but it's basically getting you from beginning all the way to the end of your character or creature production. And the reason why I think it's important is because when we create something, when we sculpt something, we always make artistic decisions. Every single time you decide to change something, every single time you put a stroke, you always make creative and artistic decisions. And so I've decided to focus on that as well, not just those kind of small things, but just in general as well, in the bigger picture, like who is your character, what is the character, who is the creature, what is the creature, why it looks this way, why the silhouette is this way, etc., etc. So everything that you would always find inside of production, if you're working in a film or video game company, you would always have a art director who is going to be showing you the things that you should be maybe focusing on, maybe paying more attention to. But basically, this is the person who drives you to make sure that you deliver the completeness of the thing that you're making, right? Not just a shell that looks good, but actually a living shell, living organism in some sense. And so those two things are combined in mentorship. They're not separate, really. I mean, they're just the whole package is basically that. Teaching is still something that I'm genuinely passionate about, and I think I'm quite good at this, because I, for some reason, maybe because I'm self-taught, because most of the things I would say that I learned, I did it on my own. I was obsessed about the craft, and so I was digging through all the materials I can find. And because of that, I'm at the same time quite, in some areas, I would say I'm limited, because, I don't have that much exposure that, let's say, somebody who might be studying in a school and they would be presented maybe different materials, although I have an argument against that, because I was teaching in schools and I was just surprised just how incredibly limited those institutions are. But in any case, I'm just saying that the things that I've learned, I did them on my own, and I think I developed a certain ability to solve problems. And the way I teach is I give those solutions to my students, and they usually surprise them, which is really interesting, right? And it's very engaging to me as a teacher. It's something that I definitely enjoy when there is a spark in the eyes, and the people just say, "Wow, I didn't think about it this way." So I definitely have that ability. The last thing that I want to mention, and this is perhaps strange to mention it here, but I do want to be quite completely open about it with you. The pricing. It's not the fact that the price now is several times more than what I had for my previous mentorships. This price is actually more adequate than the previous ones, because it was just a ridiculous price, for 15 years of professional experience, 20 years plus in total of the craft and the things that I do, and charging so little for those sessions, that was just a very, very inadequate price. Now it's more adequate. It's still very low, again, given the things that I just mentioned to you, the experience and all of that. The problem that I have here is not the price tag itself. It's the fact that the platforms that I'm using, they take quite a bit of chunk of that price. The thing here is that it's not just the chunk is being taken from what I'm getting, you are paying more as well. So the tag that I have at the moment is always 2,000 American dollars. It's going to be on ArtStation, and it's on Gumroad. It says very specifically when I create the price, 2,000. If I check on ArtStation as a guest, if I look for my mentorship, it says 2,400 plus or something like that. So that's just ridiculous. You are paying almost 2,500, those extra 500 just to cover the tax and for the percentage that the platform takes from you. I'm, on the other hand, I'm not getting those 2,000 either. I'm getting less because, again, of the chunk that is getting to the platform, plus I'm paying the tax, and so in the end I'm getting not exactly what I wanted. The same goes for the Gumroad platform. I'm not sure if when you pay there you see the same kind of spike, but I know that I'm getting quite a bit less. So my solution is that this is my email. If you are interested, send me an email and we'll figure out the best solution for both of us, because I don't want you to pay this extra, and at the same time I don't want to receive less, because I want it to be fair, right? At the moment I don't find it to be fair. I don't want to increase my price to, let's say, 3,000, and this way I might be getting close to 2,000 that I said, but for you it's going to be paying, I don't know, 3,600. So it's just unfair. I find it to be unfair, and at the same time I don't have the resources and I don't have the time to build a website, even a basic one, to just sell my mentorships there. Oh yes, and the last thing that I forgot to mention, it's very important. The amount of spots is going to be limited because there are, it's going to be 10 sessions. Every session is 2 hours long, so it's a lot. If you're not familiar with the way I teach, I talk a lot. I'm not I don't talk for just for the sake of talking. I give a lot of information. I'm getting exhausted by the end of each session. It takes me some time to recharge, right? So I still have my things to do here at home. So I've decided that I would limit the amount of people I'm taking for the mentorship. So this way I can still give you as much information as I can, but at the same time I do have my my resources not depleted completely. So that's it. That's the introduction to the mentorships. Everything is going to be in the description, and remember to send me an email if you want to talk about it directly.